Welcome to day 141 on the trail. We have 4 readings for today from John 19, verses 16 through 30, Deuteronomy 16, verse 1 through 17:13, Psalms 124 and 125, and 1 Maccabees chapter 10, verses 67 through 89. Today, we will focus on John 19 and the crucifixion of Jesus. I have always found commenting on the crucifixion of Jesus difficult. What can possibly be said about the moment when the world changed and history was transformed? The Son of God faithfully completed his Father's mission by sacrificing himself for us. The Good Shepherd, giving everything to his very last breath for his sheep. Words simply fail to express the meaning and depth of this moment. But nevertheless, there are 2 reflections I would like to offer you on this passage in John's Gospel. The first is the inscription that Pilate places on the cross of Jesus. It reads, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." This is slightly different than the one found in the other Gospels. However, this is the inscription that is most often seen in paintings or sculptures of the crucifixion. The Latin text would have read, Jesus, Nazarenus Rec Iudeorum, and would have been abbreviated INRI, as shown here. Second, I would like to spend some time reflecting on verses 28 through 30 in our reading. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said in order to fulfill Scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there. So they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Facing the crowd that had gathered on a rocky hill outside of Jerusalem, Jesus struggles to breathe. Even as death's cold shadow lengthens over him, he continues his mission. Here, suspended between the heavens and earth that he created, Jesus gives forgiveness to those who don't even know they need to be forgiven. He gives the promise of paradise to a self-proclaimed criminal. He gives his mother a new family to care for her. And then something unexpected happens. Jesus asks for something. After this, Jesus, knowing that everything was now finished, said, so that the Scriptures might be fulfilled, "I am thirsty." Here at the end of his life, Jesus is asking for something intensely practical from the crowd. Something simple. Something to drink. Jesus was thirsty. His request should not be surprising. Quite possibly, Jesus had nothing to drink since the final meal he shared with his disciples in the upper room. He was tired, racked with pain, cramping, bleeding, and suffering. So he asks for something to drink. Someone in the crowd heard Jesus and took him at his word. According to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 27, immediately one of them ran, took a sponge, and filled it with sour wine. And putting it on a stick, he gave it to him to drink. But the others were saying, "Wait, let us see if Elijah comes to save him." We don't know who stepped out of the crowd to help Jesus that day. But in the midst of the darkest moment in history, a nameless face reaches for a sponge and offers Jesus something to drink. He offers a final act of comfort and compassion amid callousness and cruelty. But others in the crowd seemed to prefer the irony. This man, dying on a cross, once said that his followers would never be thirsty. But now, he is the thirsty one. However, when I picture this crowd gathered outside of Jerusalem that day, I wonder, what would I have done in that situation? Would I have grabbed a sponge? Or would I have quietly stood with those timid souls who hid in the midst of the crowd? I would like to think that I would have been one of the first to run and get a sponge to offer a dying man something to drink. I would like to think that I would not care what the crowd thinks. I would like to think that I would not care if they laughed at me for getting involved. But maybe I would simply stand there, safely sheltered by the crowd. For those gathered in Jerusalem that day, and for us today, there is an upside. This is not the last chance for them, or for us, to do the right thing. In fact, we will all admit to having a second chance. The ones who are waiting for Elijah to show up, the ones who stood silently in the crowd and watched from a distance, all of them will ask the exact same question when they face Jesus again. On that last day, the day of judgment, everyone, including you and me, will ask this. Reading from Matthew 25, verse 37. Lord, when did we see you thirsty and gave you a drink? Jesus will respond, what did you do when you saw one of my brothers or sisters who were thirsty? Our greatest hope is that we will choose to live with courage, faith, and compassion. That we will have the courage to step out from the crowd, dismissing the fear of being ridiculed or even being made a little uncomfortable. These choices that we face throughout our lives carry eternal importance. And based on our response, may Jesus, on that final day, look at us and say, truly I tell you, just as you did these things to one of the least of these who are brothers and sisters of mine, you did them to me. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.